Hello YouTube, welcome back from my stoep. As you can hear, it's a windy day and coldish. So I'm continuing my series on South Africa and my experience of apartheid as requested by some of our users, watchers, community. And I decided to, there's two pipe-shaped names that are, has got specific connections with South Africa. The Wimpole shape and the Zulu. So I decided to do today's video with an Wimpole GBD and one that is pre-1982, I think, when GBD and Komoi amalgamated. So fitting for the time and the history. Very nice pipe. I think it's my second oldest pipe. So yeah, all right. Let me continue with my story. So, and the same disclaimer applies. I'm not an historian, and my perception might be wrong in terms of other people, but this is how I perceive and how I experienced it, in my opinion and view of the history and my personal experience of apartheid. So my turning point before that, I think I ended the last video on the brainwashing that was taken place. Now, just to reiterate it, the brainwashing was let's give it to them. The brainwashing system was really good. The only thing you heard as a child was that this is the right way of living. There was just no way that you could ever imagine anything else. So the disgruntled black people and their voices were silent. You didn't hear about them. You didn't know about it. The ANC was a prohibited organization, so it was not allowed to report on them. So we knew nothing about Mandela or the ANC or the disgruntlement of the black people for a very long time. Actually, the first time that I started realizing it was after school, when there were a bomb that went off in Pretoria, and I was in the police service, and it's only then that I started realizing what this really is. And I think my turning point came exactly in that time, because I was one night on duty, and we went out to one of the black townships, and the way that my police colleagues treated a man that was walking in the street and tried to frame him for having marijuana, or dacha as we call it, was just inhuman. And then when we had to testify the next day in the court case, we were called in, and then the police would tell us, this is what you will say today. And I don't know where I got the boldness from, but I just replied by saying, Captain, if I need to say, so help me God, I can unfortunately only say what happened. I cannot fabricate a story. My father was very passionate about telling the truth in all circumstances. So from then on, I was obviously mocked and called all kinds of names, and probably be seen as an ANC person, or in disguise or something. But in any case, so that was my turning point, and from there on, slowly but surely, also through my theology studies, I started to really realize that what we're doing to them and to black people is just not according to the heart of God. And I just got over that. Let's say I was in the police in 1979, 80. So over that 10-year period, the whole 1980 decade, I was slowly but surely, more and more convinced that what's happening here and what we're doing is just not human and just is just not right. So I remember I told someone once, actually one of my brothers, my brother and sisters, that if I would be a black person, I would be just as revolutionary as they were at the time. So by the end of the 1980s, I was then obviously against apartheid and was just hoping for a miracle to change or for something to happen. And again, as I said, the system was very good, because at that stage, the army even told because at that stage every man had to go for army service for 2 years, whether it's before your studies or after your studies. You need to go for 2 years for army service. So the army then realized, but there's a group of theologians who are against this conscription, and they offered to take us on a tour, and the first night they started speaking to us by telling us that this is a holy war, and they are just trying to preserve Christianity. Now, I think that was the biggest mistake that they could ever make, because he was talking to a group of theology students in their final year with enough knowledge of the Old Testament, New Testament, Holy War, and what. So it was a huge debate, which they obviously lost, because there was just no way that could be ever called an holy war. So that was really the one of the biggest turning points also in my life. But it then also happened that the world scene changed during the 1980s, which I think, looking back now, I realize that it helped a lot in terms of the changing views also from inside. Because remember, sanctions were gradually applied to South Africa. It's not as if everything happened at once. It was, first one country and then another country, and then no more imports of this and no more imports of that. But there were still a lot of countries who did support us. But eventually, slowly but surely, they started. The pressure from the United Nations were just becoming more and more and more. Up to a point where we were then also sanctioned on oil, and one of the achievements was that we actually developed gasoline, or what we call petrol, from coal, which from iron ore, I think, iron ore. So because we then had to make a plan to replace the oil or the petrol that we need, which was sanctioned. But again, although that was a huge invention and a huge achievement, again we couldn't sustain forever what was coming to us. So and the world scene changed. The fall of communism, the Berlin Wall, and other countries, African countries, also got more and more independent. So it really became an international community, more and more against South Africa and its policy. And also resistance inside South Africa grew more and more, and the ANC, although they were banned and were not allowed to practice or as an organization, they used vehicles to do this. For example, the United Democratic Movement, which was not banned, and the unions, the workers' unions, were also not banned, obviously, and so they used these vehicles to protest and to keep on protesting against apartheid. So so even from the white community during the 1980s, the realization that this cannot be sustained and cannot go on was happening. So it reached a point where we realized that also the war that we were running between that were actually going on is also something that we can't sustain financially. But the then Prime Minister, P.W. Botha, was relentless, and he just kept on sustaining this and keeping it intact. But then he had a stroke in 1988, 89, I'm not sure. And obviously after the stroke he wanted to continue with his leadership as being the state president. But inside the National Party, also changes started happening inside, because there were also younger politicians in the executive committee, up to a point where they actually told P.W. Botha in 1989 to step down, not kind of give him a choice. They actually told him, you need to step down. So being not in time for a general election according to the 5-year structure, they could then elect a new state president. And that is when F.W. de Klerk stepped onto the scene as the new leader, and then therefore the new state president. So, and I recall that him becoming state president brought kind of a buzz in South Africa and in politics. It's as if we expected something to happen, but we're not sure, because he was kind of quiet before that. But we knew that he was more progressive than maybe the others. So we were not sure, but there was kind of a buzz that maybe this might be the change. And then his first speech was the opening of Parliament in 2 February 1990. And that speech exceeded me, the progressive, the liberal white people, exceeded all of our expectations, and many white conservative people thought that this would be the end of the National Party by sharing or ending the war. But interesting enough, most white people were at that stage so fed up and ready for this. It's kind of the 80s got us ready for that speech in 1990, where F.W. de Klerk just said, ANC is unbanned, Mandela will be freed, and we are working to a democratic, peaceful solution in South Africa. So that was really one of the highlights and one of the highlights of my life. If I look back, I will never forget that image that I had 2 February 1990. And that was the beginning of the negotiations between the National Party government and then the ANC. Many banned ANC leaders came back. Mandela was released. A multi-party negotiation team was set up, and they were really starting to discuss the new constitution and the way forward. It was not easy. Those 4 years were between 1990 and 1994, when the first democratic election took place, was very, very troublesome and tense times, because the white people were thinking that we're giving the country back and losing it again after the English took it from us in the past. So there were far right-wing people who started shooting and black people, and so it was really a tense time. But the leadership of Mandela already, although he was not yet the state president, already came through by calming the people and just saying, listen, we're busy talking, we're busy getting a peaceful solution. Let's not take anything in our own hands, and let's work this thing out. So that was very important, and that was the birth of the new South Africa, and something that I will never regret. I don't want to live in those years again. I don't want to feel that slavery again. in a certain sense, and many black people can't understand that, but for many white people like myself, the freedom of 1994 was also freedom for us. Although we had freedom before that, we had not really freedom. Maybe we can call it emotional freedom, or free from fear. But it felt to me, at least, that that we really free at last. So that came 1994. We voted, and Nelson Mandela became president. And I can actually say the rest is history. But there's plenty to say after that also. But that was how, in a short, how the changes came about in South Africa. I do have more videos, although I've reached 1994, because there are 2 or more topics that I would like to discuss as part of the series. So don't go away. Join me on my next video, and I'll discuss some more experiences and things that I realized at the time. So, friends, on that note, this is really nice. It's a GLP Samara in my GBD Wimpole. But as I said, on that note, thank you for watching, and subscribe, come back, leave comments, discuss, ask questions, anything, you're welcome, and thank you for joining me on my stoop. Thank you. Bye-bye.